Thank you and welcome to the show today. The topic this morning is a profile on Dr. James Hefner, the president of Tennessee State University, and we have with us to give us that profile Dr. Hefner himself. And Dr. Hefner, let me thank you for coming by and being with us on this final time. As a matter of fact, I think we decided to call this Summing Up. The administration of Dr. James Hefner, president of Tennessee State University. And of course, we know of your retirement from Tennessee State University, and we know that you're going to go on and do many, many other things. But Dr. Hefner, what we'd like to try to do today is to give you an opportunity to look back on your whole career, to sort of give us a profile on some of the things that were important in terms of your background, your education, and eventually leading you to Tennessee State University, so that our young people, and not only our young people, but our elderly folks as well, yes, might be encouraged by your career. Let's talk about it from that perspective.
Well, I think it started with Dr. Juanita Tate, who taught me economics at North Carolina A&T State University. Dr. Tate knew that I wanted to be a journalist, knew that I wanted to go into business. So those are two ideas that I had as an undergraduate student. But she had never produced an African-American PhD in economics. And she had been teaching for 30 years. And so Dr. Tate decided that I was the person that she was going to train to be an economist and to teach at the collegiate level. So for 3 years, my sophomore, my junior, and my senior years, I had to go to her house from 4 to 5 every day. She lived right off campus. And that started this whole thing of my interest in the academy through her. And so when I graduated, she saw to it that I went to Atlanta University for my master's degree, although I had a fellowship to Duke and Columbia, because I wrote for the student newspaper, and the sit-in started at my school and spread throughout the nation. So Columbia was a logical choice for me to go, but she said, no, you're not going into journalism. You're not even going into business. I want you to go to Atlanta University and study under Samuel Westerfield. And Samuel Westerfield was a young man who received his doctorate in economics from Harvard University, a black man. And I want you to study under him, even though I had a scholarship to go to Duke for my PhD and a fellowship to go to Columbia in journalism. So I acceded to her wish, and I went to Atlanta University. I graduated, and from there I went to Prairie View A&M College, and from there other places. So what happened is I had this teacher who believed in me, who wanted to replicate herself. And from that, I was able to get into the academy. And the rest is history. Atlanta University, master's, PhD, University of Colorado, Boulder. From Boulder, I went to Atlanta, and I ended up at Morehouse College as an endowed professor. I did do some work at Princeton and at Harvard, but primarily I was an endowed professor of economics at Morehouse College. From there, I went to Tuskegee as the provost, and I was there for only 22 months before I became president of Jackson State University. And I was there for 7 years, and this is my 13th, going into my 14th year as president of Tennessee State University.
You know, Dr. Hefner, when you look at, and we've got about a minute before our commercial break, and I'll just raise this question so that you might be able to deal with it during our second segment. But when you look at your entire career, at what point do you believe that you had a feeling that you ought to be the president of an institution of higher education? At what point? I mean, what happened in terms of your own career that at that precise moment convinced you that perhaps you ought to go further and seek to be eventually a president of an institution of higher education?
I think that what happened is that three people had confidence in me. The president of Morehouse College, you had Stephen Wright, who was president of Fisk, and then Hampton, and you had Vivian Henderson, who was the president of Clark College. And these were my mentors, and these were individuals who felt very good about me. But of course, I was not interested in being a college president because I had a $500,000 endowed chair at Morehouse College.
And let us interrupt here, Dr. Hefner, after which we'll come back and give you an opportunity to complete that. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show. We're talking to Dr. James Hefner, the president of Tennessee State University, and it is a summary of his administration at Tennessee State University and some of the things that were important in terms of his own career. And Dr. Hefner, I think you were talking about the three individuals who played such a significant role in eventually convincing you that you ought to move beyond and to be a candidate perhaps for one of these positions. Talk about those individuals for us.
Well, Vivian Henderson was an economist. He was at Fisk University, and he chaired the Department of Economics, and then he went to Clark College as president. He was the one that recruited me away from the University of Colorado, Boulder, when I finished up my coursework for the degree. And as a result of him, I did my dissertation dealing with black employment in Atlanta. So it was Vivian who molded me, who brought me under his wing as president when he was president of Clark College, and I was one of the faculty members. And I left Clark College and did some work at Princeton, and it was Vivian who convinced me to leave Princeton to come back south. And he indicated that you need to give back to the African American community. And so my wife, I moved my family back to Atlanta, and I worked with Vivian. And then the other person who came to my mind was Dr. Hugh Gloucester of Morehouse College. Dr. Gloucester gave me a $500,000 chair. I was the first Charles A. Murrow Professor of Economics at Morehouse. I would have had this chair until I was 70 years of age. But my friends at Morehouse encouraged me to go upstairs, and even Dr. Gloucester encouraged that. So I ended up going to Tuskegee Institute as provost. So I left an endowed chair and went to Tuskegee as provost. And there's where I met Stephen Wright, who came in and was a consultant to me when I was a provost. And as a result of those three men, the second year that I was at Tuskegee as provost, they recommended me for presidency. And I was surprised by that, but they felt that I had the values, the know-how, the skills to be a college president. And as a result of what those men did for me, I ended up being a college president.
You know, Dr. Hefner, you talk about your stay at Tuskegee Institute.
Yes.
And I've had an opportunity to, on this show, interview a large number of individuals from Alabama and from Tuskegee and et cetera. But I've never had an opportunity to have somebody to tell me personally, what influence do you still find that Tuskegee Institute left by Mr. Booker T. Washington? Talk about Washington and Tuskegee and how you found what is going on there and the influence that he had there.
Well, I was always very interested in W.B. Du Bois, and you know, and of course I did go into Tuskegee with some prejudices regarding Booker T. Washington. And then I found that really, if you look at a corn, on one side you have a certain picture, on the other side you have the other. What they did for each other, they complemented each other, and one was the intellect and one was the pragmatist. And so what I learned at Tuskegee is that the pragmatists developed that institution and created men and women who contributed much to the world. Now, Du Bois, in my intellectual world, is my champion, and so Du Bois was the idealist. Of course, Booker T, the pragmatist. But you need in this world both pragmatists and idealists. And those two values have helped me in the presidency of Tennessee State University, as well as the presidency of Jackson State University.
And so Washington's influence is still there.
Washington's influence is still there, and he believed in academic excellence. And that is what, of course, Du Bois believed in as well.
And now, when you reach Tennessee State University, you believe that students matter most. Talk about that from the perspective of why students ought to.
Well, I think that that is something that I learned at both Morehouse and at Tuskegee, that students do matter most. And your job is to do an extraordinary job of educating them. Never believe that students cannot learn. Push them against intellectual walls and give them intellectual headaches. And that is what I learned when I was at the University of Colorado. That's what I did when I taught at Princeton, is that you don't assume that kids cannot learn. You provide them with expectations beyond what they think they can achieve. And you'll find that many of them will do that.
And so that has been sort of a creed in terms of your academic career.
My academic career has been around excellence. I mean, I do not in any way say that I'm sorry that I believe in excellence.
Well, as a matter of fact, let's talk about some of the accomplishments that your administration was able to perform for Tennessee State University over the many years.
Well, I'm delighted to say that for the last 10 years, TSU has been listed in U.S. News and World Report as one of the 229 best colleges in the country. No other black college has been able to achieve that consistently. And that represents the excellence that I was taught by those three presidents who felt that I was worthy of being a president. The other thing is that there are only 3 black colleges in the country with a Phi Kappa Phi Honor Society, and that is the most prestigious honor society comprising all academic disciplines. Tennessee State is one. When I was president of Jackson State, that's another. And then North Carolina A&T. Only 3 black colleges with the most prestigious honor society. And that says something about what we believe in quality and excellence. And that's something that I can say about TSU. The academic side is there. And the building part is I've built 8 new buildings since I've been at TSU. I renovated every building on the main and downtown campuses. That is the most beautiful campus I know in the country. And we create that metamorphosis around building and excellence.
And you've also made arrangements for that downtown. Why don't you make some statements in reference to that downtown facility and what can happen to that facility, Dr.
Well, as a result of the consent decree, which TSU received the bulk of the funds, we are going to renovate the downtown campus, and it will be very, very important for non-traditional students, because we find in this society in which we live now, non-traditional students predominate. And so TSU will be one of the institutions out there educating non-traditional students. So we're going to renovate it. We're going to make that campus what it used to be on the University of Tennessee, Nashville.
And you'll have, and of course we're getting ready, Dr. Hefner, for our second commercial break, after which we'll come back and we'll have several minutes to deal with some additional topics. But in terms of your building program, in terms of the academic achievement, we'd also like for you to say later something about the faculty, because I think that you've been very, very important and instrumental in terms of faculty development. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to this final segment of the show for today. The guest is Dr. James Hefner, the president of Tennessee State University, and this show represents a summary of some of his accomplishments at Tennessee State University. And of course, Dr. Hefner, what we'd like to do during this last segment is to give you an opportunity to talk about some of the things that were important in terms of your tenure at Tennessee State University, and how you hope that you could move on beyond that, and et cetera, whatever you wish to, however you wish to address that.
Well, first of all, I think that the motto, students matter most, I think it's a part of my lifestyle, because I do think that students matter most. The lady who had so much influence on me at the undergraduate level that I was telling you about, Dr. Tate, said that students matter most. So I've emphasized that at TSU, and I came in with a certain number of students. We have now over 9,000 students at the university. We are the 8th or 9th largest black college in America. It was not always the case, but we also want to grow with quality. It's good to talk about quantity, but you also want to grow with quality, so we've done that. The other thing is with the faculty. We have an extraordinary faculty. In fact, our faculty is so good that we lead the state in terms of research productivity. When I came to TSU in 1991, we were around $6 to $7 million in research. Now we are $41 million. We lead all of the institutions of higher learning in the Tennessee Board of Regents system. Only 2 other institutions outdo us, and that is the Vanderbilt University and, of course, the University of Tennessee. But we are #1 among the institutions of higher learning in the TBR system at $41 million. The other thing I want to do is I wanted to create an environment where a beautiful campus where people would know that here's an institution that cares about itself, with plazas and courtyards and things of that sort. A beautiful campus with good students and a fine faculty. Those are the things that I think make up a university. The last thing I think is important, and that is the values that you try to exude to people around you. And that is this, that diversity is extraordinarily important. All of us should be about diversity. But the heritage of TSU is primary as far as I'm concerned. I think that that heritage of producing an Oprah Winfrey, producing a Ralph Boston or Wilma Rudolph, of producing the outstanding graduates that we have produced over time, that heritage should remain at the same time within the midst of diversity. So TSU is moving into an era where diversity is very, very important, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, though, I have tried to hold on to the heritage of that university to make sure that people understand that we have done an extraordinary job since 1912.
And of course, Dr. Hefner, I think you mentioned your faculty. Why don't you speak to some of the accomplishments of that faculty? Because I think that you know, you've got them all out in space and they're collecting money and etc.
Oh, yes,
Speak to
indeed.
some of the accomplishments.
Well, of course, we are very good in astrophysics and astronomy, and we are the first institution in the world to discover the planet outside of our solar system. So that is extraordinarily important, and I very much appreciate that. You take our College of Business. At one time, only Tennessee State and Vanderbilt had accredited colleges of business. Just recently, Belmont became accredited. But here you have an institution that's one of the smallest institutions in the Tennessee Board of Regents system that has a faculty that produces research that are worldwide. Their achievements extraordinary. You have students who read papers. You have a lot of things going on that I'm very, very proud of. And that faculty, primarily made up of PhDs, many of whom write books and articles and things of that sort. I am proud of all the things that they've been able to do, and they have made me what I am today. And I think a very good president of a wonderful institution in Tennessee.
You know, I was thinking, Dr. Hefner, you mentioned the faculty, and I think that there was something that came out of your business school indicating the impact that the economic impact I think that Tennessee State University has had upon Greater Nashville, and et cetera. Speak to that, because I think that a lot of folks don't seem to understand.
Well, I wanted people to understand the impact of TSU, because I think that TSU is Nashville's best kept secret. And so I said, I want one of you, and I even picked out the economist to do it, since I have a PhD in economics. And so I want you to look at the economic impact of TSU on the city, and it came out to be $500 million. And when I told people this, and when it was written in the newspaper, they said, how can that be? But that is it. This university means so much to this city that if you were to get rid of TSU, you have to reinvent it because of the impact that it has had on employment, on all the variables that you look at in terms of economic stability for this city and for this state. And I think that people now have to understand that that school out where the Cumberland River is located, that is a school to reckon with. And that is a school that you should not take for granted. And too long that has happened. And I'm saying to everyone who listens, do not take TSU for granted, because it is a tremendous resource for this state and for this nation.
And Dr. Hefner, I understand that as part of all of that, that there has been a different attitude over the last decade in terms of how people, and especially people in the business community and other political community as well, have sort of viewed Tennessee State University. Let's speak to that.
I think you're right about that, and I think that credit is due to the faculty and students that we have produced. Some people say that I have made a difference, but I look at my faculty and students and the achievements. One thing that people need to know, and that is that something is going on at TSU. And so if you read the newspapers, you'll find all the achievements that we've done, and our faculty and students, and those things have changed mindsets, and that's important.
You know, over the last we've got 3 minutes here, and what I would like for you to do, Dr. Hefner, is to take this time to talk to not college students. We've had an opportunity over the last couple of weeks to deal with middle grade students in these middle schools. And we have some real problems in terms of those middle schools. And I would like for you to take for the next 2 or 3 minutes to talk to these young people about how very, very important it is that they move away from violence, go and speak to them so that they can hear it from somebody like yourself.
I think that if Jesse Jackson and James Hefner, Jesse Jackson and I were schoolmates, I think that if two people who come from poor environments, where Jesse did not have a father, I had both my parents, we had to work our way through school. If we could make it, then I think that a lot of other people can make it as well. I think that young people need to understand the importance of education, and that there is a horizon out there that if they stretch, if they dream long enough and hard enough, they can achieve what Jesse Jackson achieved and what Jesse Russell, who perfected the cellular telephone and graduated from Tennessee State and came from a very poor area in Nashville. Here's a young man, when you look at a cellular telephone, he brought it to practicality. Jesse Russell, he graduated from Tennessee State in electrical engineering, went to Stanford, and then he went to AT&T and headed up wireless technology. If he can do it, coming out of a very poor area in Nashville, then you can do it as well.
That they must be inspired and they must have some kind of vision in terms of what is possible.
That's right. I think that's very, very important. I had the vision from 3 extraordinary presidents, and they kept me along the path that I think has served me well.
And of course, Dr. Hefner, over this last minute that we have here, let me simply thank you for coming by and being with us today. I'm just delighted to have had an opportunity to work with you on this particular show over the last 10 or 12 years. We've had you on many, many times, and each time that we have you on, you bring us such excellent information, and I think more than just the information, I think it's the encouragement that you bring. It gives our young people an opportunity to see what is possible, you see, and if they know that you did not just walk into Tennessee State University as the president of Tennessee State University, that there's a long road and there's a long career behind you, and we want to sort of emphasize that and take knowledge of that. And let me thank you for coming by and being with us, and let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.